Good morning, everybody. My name is John. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And we are having a meeting based on how to maintain a happy recovered state. It's entitled Keeping in Good Spirits. And the point of this meeting is that we'll want to watch for any unwanted spirit. And when we refer to spirit, we're talking to something actually tangible. We're not talking about a Hollywood-style spirit. We're talking about spirits like fear, resentment, selfishness, and dishonesty. This is the negative side of those spirits. And for each one of those, there is a positive. There are good principles of courage, forgiveness, compassion, and honesty. As you can see on the board, it identifies each one of them. And there is its exact opposite. So I'll say that one more time. On the left there's fear, selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment. And on the right-hand side, the positive spirits, courage, compassion, honesty, and forgiveness. Now, what we want to look at is, what spirits have we lived by in the past?
The negative one.
The negative ones, right? Could that possibly be our problem?
Yes.
That we were under the impression that if fear motivated us, we get up in the morning worried about our bills for the day and worried about what circumstance will turn out to be, that somehow this motivation, which we do get motivated by fear, that somehow things would turn out okay. But in all reality, when we're operating out of fear, we're usually making a lot of decisions that are not really best for ourselves or others. We're just simply running away from a monster. What's even worse, it's usually a monster that doesn't exist. On the other hand, if we're operating out of courage, courage gives us that ability to move forward and get the job done that we need to get done. If you look at these men who have faced great challenges, that have gotten medals of valor for heroic acts and so forth, it's not that they were free of the awareness of the danger they're facing, perhaps in a wartime situation, but they face that with courage and they move forward. So courage is the spirit by which we would like to live. We look at the second one here, selfishness. If I'm selfish, then everything I'm doing has a self-seeking motive behind it. If it's a self-seeking motive, then guess what? I'm immediately cutting myself off from relationships with other people. I begin doing some things like living in my mind of what it's going to do to benefit me and me alone. The best I can do in thinking of helping others is possibly making them envious or jealous of the cool things I get. So you can see immediately where we're shifting into a place of a kind of a mental illness there. Because if you're envious of what I have, then that's probably not going to be a good relationship. I'm not building a relationship, and I'm not building a tie between you and I. So if I'm out there with self-seeking motives, I'm probably actually cutting myself off from relationships daily. All the loved ones that I would be building relationships with, all the business associates that I would be building relationships with, I'm losing those relationships. In the end, who pays? Me. And then I wonder why I'm not successful financially or with the love and care in my life. Well, I went out for 3 weeks in a row and thought about nobody but me. So everything that was a potential business relationship that would have led towards greater financial prosperity, well, since I was trying to kind of take advantage of everybody or get what I want, I've cut all those relationships off. Instead of going out into the world and facing life successfully and building relationships with my family, well, it's all about me and that family serving me. Well, they're probably not going to want to be too close because I'm not offering much. I'm just seeing what I can get. I'm looking at the world as a resource instead of what I can contribute to the world. Selfishness. On the other hand, compassion. When I have compassion for my fellows, when I have compassion for that businessman that's trying to build his business, and I go in and do a little extra something to try to help him out, and he gets a benefit out of it, he's grateful, or she's grateful. Well, next thing you know, I've built a strong relationship. Well, what happens when I've done that 50 or 60 times during the year? I've got 50 or 60 business people that I've built relationships with. And I don't even have to worry about prosperity anymore. I've got a number of people that have in their mind an awareness of what I've done, and probably in their heart a feeling of what I've done. Maya Angelou once said, "I may not remember what you said to me, but I will remember how it made me feel." I may not remember what you did for me, but I will remember how it made me feel. So these very things that we think are survival skills that we need, is selfishness, self-centeredness, self-seeking, they're actually the very things that destroy us. And it's not easy when we spend a life being selfish, breaking relationships, looking out for number one. It's not easy to turn our thinking around completely that I shouldn't be doing something unless I'm benefiting someone else. I really should take no action in this world unless it has a benefit to someone else. And if for any minute I get into that, what am I getting out of it? I probably need to pray to God immediately. Say, God, please remove this selfishness from me. Dishonesty. This one goes real deep. Most people think of honesty as having something to do with money and a cash register or something like that. But that's actually just a very small discipline that just about everybody can get pretty easily. Honesty. Honesty of, here's one. I need to stay in Hatchery House for 6 months and really pay attention to what I'm doing. And I need to listen to the people that have gone before and have a successful program. Honesty. I've spent 20 years, 30 years really screwing my life up. It might not hurt me to spend a couple of years where my primary focus is on changing my way of thinking, feeling, and acting. That's honesty. For me personally, I realized that my process was probably going to be about a 7-year process. That was about 3 years ago. And guess what? It's turning out to be about a 7-year process. And that's before I actually knew what the outcome was. And it, in my case, was something biblical. I remember reading something in the Bible about renewing, a person being renewed every 7 years. So that was in the back of my mind over there in a little corner of it. It's probably going to take about 7 years to renew myself from having these as my motivating factors. And when I say these, I'm talking about the fear, selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment. So being honest really starts with me. And we see that on page 58 of the Big Book. It says rigorous honesty and talks about these things, but oftentimes, again, our mind takes us right back to a cash register kind of honesty when we miss the whole point. So let's jump over to page 58 and take a look at that real quick. and I'm not going to read the whole page or anything, but where it does say, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with their neighbor, no, with a BMW salesman, no, with themselves. With themselves. Can you be honest with yourself? Can I be honest with myself? To be honest, I'm a very sick person. The results speak for themselves, and I probably need to dedicate some significant amount of time and energy to healing spiritually. That's honest. And that probably means I need to spend hundreds of hours listening to people who have been successful at this deal. People who have had 20, 30 years of good recovery, that have built a strong relationship in business, in church, with their families. And I need to let those people mentor me in their own way. Not necessarily that I need to sit around getting advice in the traditional sense, ask questions, get advice. But what about just listening to a recording, or all the recordings of Bob Darrell? Listening to all the recordings of Mark Houston, taking notes on every single one of them. That's probably 60 recordings right there, 60 hours. Probably another 60 hours of notes. Well, I've spent decades doing it the other way. I know what the results are. Honesty tells me I need to spend some significant time doing it this other way. That's honesty. And resentment, well, I was talking with Cole the other day. Resentment's kind of one of these things that is just hideous. That's why it's the number one offender. And, it's, if we'll jump over, let's see, page 64 here, we'll just read that real quick. It says, resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From its stem all forms of spiritual disease. For we have not only been mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. So this tells us the root of that spiritual sickness. And let's just kind of examine what resentment is. It's kind of like when you watch a football game or something, and you see the play, and let's say the guy's running out there, and he trips and breaks his leg. Well, the first time it was pretty rough. It's like, oh my gosh, look at that. But now they stop the film, and they go back, and they zoom in and put it in slow motion. And now instead of it just being a broken leg, I see it slow motion just snap and go backwards in the gruesome nature.
Those who've ever experienced it.
The gruesome nature of it. Well, that's how resentments work. Each time I review an old memory of something bad, I enhance it a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
It went from being, that person said something I didn't like, to that person is evil and bad and I need to talk crap about them. A never-ending story of woe. Well, these evil spirits, and I like to call them that because they darn sure are. There's nothing good that comes from these. Now, some people will say things like, well, isn't there a such thing as good fear? No, there's not, because not in this context. And why we say that is, fear is one of those words kind of like love. You know, I can love my donuts and I can love my children. There's a very big difference in loving donuts and loving children, right?
Not really.
Leave it to this guy. Fear is one of those words that we can use pretty broadly, like love. But in this case, the type of fear that we're talking about is always bad, and that's that emotional fear that's not really hinged on any genuine warning or any real concern that's legitimate. for example, if I get in my car and I decide that I'm going to drive the wrong way down Bryant Boulevard on a one-way, there's pretty good warning. I'm either going to get a ticket or I'm going to hurt somebody and myself. That's not fear. That's just reality that there's going to be some damage done. Or if I get up on a big building and I stand near the edge with gusts of wind coming in, that's not fear at all. That's not fear of heights or fear of whatever. That's a warning. There's a good chance I get blown off and fall down and break some bones or perhaps kill myself. So those are warnings. Those are real. I can attach it to a real event that can very likely take place. But if I'm imagining that if Jesse doesn't treat me right, then the next thing you know, the other guys aren't going to treat me right. And before you know it, everything's going to be out of control. And it's going to be bad. No one's going to listen, and it's all Jesse's fault. That's a fear. Truth is that's probably not going to happen. Jesse treated me bad. Probably everybody else is going to see that he is and say, well, Jesse's a real douche. They're not going to get into a situation wherein it is that perceived situation that I have in my mind. Or I could perceive, maybe somebody doesn't talk to me at a meeting or something, or at work or what have you. I wonder what's wrong with them. Maybe I've got a problem with them. And really all it was is they've got something on their mind. They need to do an oil change on their car. It had nothing to do with me. Perceived. So we've got to remember this fear that we're talking about, and that's why it is the negative spirit that it is. Now let me ask you something. Do you think it's reasonable, and everyone, if you agree with this, let me know.
Sorry.
Do you think living by these positive spirits could probably really benefit our lives?
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, if I'm courageous, I'm getting things done I wouldn't get done otherwise. If I'm compassionate, I have relationships that are being built all the time, and they start adding up. If I'm honest with myself and I take the time to get in touch with myself, my fellows, my God, and accept the truth about myself in all honesty, then I'm probably going to build the character that I need to be trustworthy, to be the kind of man that people could count on. And then the opposite of resentment is forgiveness. Can I find the ability to forgive all of those people with whom I'm angry? And if I do, once again, am I not building relationships, building a quality of life that will lead to much better outcomes? Well, of course. If I'm following these positive spirits, in a nutshell, I'm controlling my emotional nature. Let's look on page 52. Again, I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but one of the things that it talks about in this paragraph that we call the bedevilments is we were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. So it tells me that that's one of the problems, is not controlling my emotional nature. I'll get angry when I don't want to get angry. I'll get resentful when I don't want to be resentful. I'll be fearful when I don't need to be fearful. So as I start living by this new set of principles, courage, compassion, honesty, and forgiveness, I begin to control my emotional nature. It actually becomes something that's second nature, that I greet life with a different set of principles. Now, if you haven't experienced this, it's difficult to understand what the difference would be. And to really know what this does for you. So it's something that we actually have to do it to start seeing the results before we can truly experience what it's like. For example, I could tell a person who's never taken a drug, a mood-altering drug in their life, I could tell them all day what it's like to take cocaine or Jack Daniels. But until they've experienced it, they don't really know what I'm talking about, do they? Until they put that bottle to their mouth or taken a line of that cocaine, they don't really know. They haven't experienced it. Exactly.
Yeah.
We can have contempt for things like this. You don't really know until you've done it. But once you've done it for a while and you realize, gosh, I went from having no friends and being questioned at every corner by everyone and people seeing that I'm self-seeking to a complete opposite. I've built relationships. Then we've experienced it, and we'll want more of it because it's a good experience. These are just Christ's principles, by the way. There's nothing new about what we're talking about. Biblically, Christ told us to pray for our enemies, didn't he? To love those that hate us, to feed our enemies. That all sounds like forgiveness to me, doesn't it? Does it to you? Yeah. Honesty. Well, there's quite a bit biblically that talks about honesty. And there's a lot that is very strong about change is necessary, biblically. So these are all just Christ's principles. So if we live by these principles for a while, we start developing a belief that's impossible to have without doing them. For example, I run into a lot of people who say, well, I'm not a Christian. I can't believe in that stuff. Invariably, you will find that they haven't lived by Christian principles for any length of time. So they haven't experienced the warmth, the comfort, the serenity, the peace, the strength that comes from that. Well, it's kind of, again, it's like describing to somebody what the effect of Jack Daniels is that's never taken a drink. You know? I mean, for me to describe Jack Daniels, let's just look at it. Well, when you take a drink of it, it's going to burn your throat really bad. It's going to hit your gut. It's going to kind of burn all the way down. Then after you drink for a couple of hours, you might see double vision and not actually be able to get around very well. And it's going to be very difficult to step off a porch without falling over. And you won't be able to hardly walk without wobbling and looking really funny to anyone who sees you. And oh yeah, if you get in a car, you might end up killing somebody. Jack Daniels. Those are the external effects of Jack Daniels. Doesn't sound appealing, does it? But I guarantee you, I'll pour you a big glass of Jack Daniels and you drink it. You'll understand why people drink Jack Daniels. Well, that's the same thing with Christ's principles. In this case, it doesn't have all the poisoning effects or those side effects I described with Jack Daniels, but until you've taken it in your system and you know what it's about, and you experience that deep inward feeling of the Spirit of God inside you, there's no way I can describe it any more than I can describe to you what Jack Daniels does for me. But I'll promise you, we don't have billions of people over history that have been willing to die for Christianity that were just miserable folks. Something's happening deep inside that's the most satisfying experience they've ever had. Isn't that reasonable to say? If it was just words and just a joke, I ain't gonna let nobody cut my head off, or whatever it is, throughout the years that people have been martyred. And certainly I'm not that loyal to any team. So it's not team spirit that keeps me going on the, team Christian. No. It's a deep internal awareness that I'm doing God's will. It's a deep internal comfort that the power of Christ gives me by Christ living in my heart. So that's kind of important to actually pause and investigate. Why would so many people follow this? Well, we're talking about 4 of the main Christ principles here, by the way. He's the guy who got all this started. And he knew about how we're supposed to live. And the person that benefits the most is you. So you will have comfort in trying this new way of living. And you don't have to become a Jesus freak, and you don't even have to have a slogan, Jesus saves, or any of that. You'll just live by the principles. Then you're going to start experiencing the comfort. And then you might want to give the guy who made this possible credit for what he's done for you. That's kind of how our program works. And you don't ever have to give Christ credit for having saved your life. He's not going to require that. He's not a prideful guy that says, I need all the credit. What he wants to do is he wants to help you have a better life. So you don't ever have to get into that giving him credit for saving your life and making you happy. But you might want to at some point in time once you see that it works. The other thing is understanding that the evil spirits, which we've identified here, fear, selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment, they are unseen. I mean, I can't take a picture of your fear. Just like I can't take a picture of the person's internal feelings that's drunk. I might be able to take a picture of them wobbling around, but I can't take a picture of the actual effect that Jack Daniels has on them, right? I can take a picture of the side effect, but not the actual effect. On the other hand, these evil spirits are easy to know and see in the sense that we know when we're feeling resentment. We know when we're having fear. We know when we're having selfishness. We know when we're having dishonesty. Dishonesty might be the most elusive of them. I've, like some guys, they just they're doing terrible, and they're virtually dead from drugs or alcohol. They sober up for 4 or 5 days, and I'm never going to touch that stuff again. And that's pretty dishonest, right? Because they just detoxed and they're healthy enough to go have another drink is what basically is happening.
At the time, though, they truly feel like they're never going to touch it again. And it's just as soon as they start being alone with themselves, like internally, you know what I'm saying? That's when the craving and the obsession just kicks in.
That's a very good point. They feel like it's just unthinkable that I would do that to myself again. And then shortly down the road, there they are.
Saltine crackers are ready to go again.
So what, and you're exactly right. So there is more to this dishonesty thing, and Matthew just pointed out than we think. We've got to go a little deeper than just how we feel. We've got to get into some objectivism. What have I done in the past? What were my patterns in the past? And how much is a reasonable amount of information and treatment for somebody who's had a couple of decades of really messing up and making the same mistakes over and over and over again? Well, again, it's probably the next couple of years of your life should be pretty well focused on getting mentally and spiritually healed. Now, obviously, you're going to need to do some other things during that time, a job and so forth. But you build your job around your recovery. You build your relationships around your recovery. You don't build your recovery around those things. And I think that's a pretty safe way to go with that. That the core, the nucleus of my life is that. You might want to make a note of that. The nucleus of my life needs to be recovery. Well, the same goes for these good spirits. It's, as I mentioned a moment ago, I can't necessarily see how being forgiving is benefiting me when I really want to be angry at somebody. But in time, once I experience it, it'll make perfect sense and I'll want more of it. And we've all heard the saying, he's in good spirits today, or she's in bad spirits. Well, the question is it just cliche, or is it rooted in truth? That we use this word spirit quite a bit. Team spirit, Holy Spirit, good spirits, spirit rally. Well, I think if one does some research, the word spirit means a lot like what we're talking about here. Throughout history, they were talking about these unseen things that really are real, but they're not a part of reality in the sense that I can see and take a picture of them. So are we going to be in good spirits today? And how do we do that? Well, to be in good spirits, it's pretty simple. Courage, compassion, honesty, and forgiveness with everything we do throughout this day. We've only got 24 hours. I don't have to worry about this for a lifetime. But can I have those 4 good spirits in which I'm operating on today?
Don't you feel like the positive spirit list is basically summed up by Serenity Prayer? Jolly Grant.
I really think that you're right. I mean, what David said here is the Serenity Prayer encompassing that? Absolutely. And the Lord's Prayer and the St. Francis Prayer. So yeah, again, it's not a new message. It's just, do we want to live on the side that is created by the Father of Light, or do we want to live in the darkness? So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Isn't that neat how popular the Serenity Prayer is, though? That's what makes me think. It wasn't written until, 1939? You think it's old biblical history. It's so popular worldwide. There was a man who sat down and wrote that prayer down. And it contained so much truth that people from Russia to the United States, back to Australia, they know that prayer. One man writing down one prayer, and it wasn't an AA prayer when it was written. How fascinating is that? It's a bestseller. It's popping, yeah. Okay, now we're going to review the notes today, and I may discuss some notes with some of you guys, just to, do the, make sure the understanding of what we're talking about here is absorbed. And have you seen the signs that are outside liquor stores that say wine and spirits?
What?
What do you think about that word, team spirit? Let's just go around the room, just real quick. You don't have to. What does the word team spirit mean to you?
Are you saying team or teen?
Team.
That we're all behind the team, that we're all focused on one goal.
Team spirit's like a positive group mindset. Like, 'cause everything, like all of our emotions and stuff comes from the way that our brains work and stuff. The team spirit would be just a positive mindset. Like a positive group mindset.
A unified emotion.
Whoa.
Ooh, that's
You
deep.
sound so guru-y. You sound,
It's the beard. As the beard grows, so does your wisdom.
Yeah, feeling of unity and a common goal.
common goal. Coming together, right?
Why team spirit in this case to me would be Team Jesus is, as a person going through recovery, we have the same goal in mind, is to live a Christian life and have a strong relationship with Jesus. But yeah, team spirit is the common goal.
What do you think, Brian? You have to report.
I don't know, a spirit coming from the same source, a group of people.
For me, I think it'd be like, just like that, negative or positive. Like, because I used to like say play sports, and like sometimes we'd all be like, "You're gonna lose," or something like that. And it can be negative. It can be like, "Okay, guys, it's gonna be easy," or something like that. It just all depends on which side you're against. Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, the team spirit can be a negative spirit or a positive spirit. What do you think, Jeff?
I think it's the bee's knees, which is, it's an affectionate term from one person to another. It's a compliment, but in the realm of team spirit, it would be a communal, multiple, exponential type comment.
Okay, thank you very much. As far as how I look at team spirit, I think Jaron said it best, actually, which is kind of cool. It can be negative or it can be positive.
Sure.
You know, I can think of team spirit as something, my team is the greatest, and I hate everybody else's team. And then I can get in conflict with those other people. Or I can have a negative spirit about what we're doing as a team. Or I can recognize that we're all on the same team. Team human being. And I can have a team spirit to recognize that I don't need to be divided from my fellows. I don't need to look at all the deficiencies of my fellows, but to ask, like we talk about on page 67, how I can be helpful to my brother. Save me from being angry. There's nothing that says a team has to be small. On the other hand, I can use this team spirit to divide me from large groups of people and somehow think my team is better than theirs. I'm part of the special few.
America.
Yeah, that's an example. You know, I don't think God really probably wants us to think we're better than other people. He probably wants us to help and be an example to other people. And our team can be really a great team. Or we could go the way of so many other nations in the histories, you know, get arrogant, rude, mean, and literally destroy ourselves in the process. Well, so we have to be careful, but be aware that the spirit that we have as a group can be a powerful thing. I will share with you that it's a collective ego. In many cases, sort of team spirit is a collective ego. And what a collective ego can do that would immediately be identified as psychotic in an individual, a collective ego can get away with. So we have to be careful. For example, if I didn't like my neighbor, and they had some stuff that I didn't like, if I went over and shot my neighbor, well, I'd immediately be, hey, you're not supposed to do that. But if I did it as a collective group, then hey, I can do that because our group said it's okay. So we have to be careful about what teams we're on, you know, because that's how cults get started. That's how nations get sidetracked. And I don't in any way want to get into any kind of a political thing, but we do want to recognize how powerful a team spirit is. In this case, we're on team recovery to help our fellows, to welcome them to the group, to be in a mode. We're looking out for those people, and it brings us back to recovery being a nucleus of our life. Would somebody be kind enough to look up the word Holy Spirit? I believe Matthew has it here.
Nice, you can do it faster.
It says the Holy Spirit is God's power in action, His active force. God sends out. That's Micah 3:8 and Luke 1:35. God sends out His Spirit by projecting His energy to any place to accomplish His will. Psalm 104:30 through 139:7. In the Bible, the word Spirit is translated from the Hebrew word ruach and the Greek word pneuma. Most often, those words refer to God's active force or Holy Spirit. Genesis 1:2, or Genesis 1:2. However, the Bible also uses those words in other senses: breath, wind, the vital or animating force in living creatures, a person's disposition or attitude, spirit persons, including godly angels. These meanings all share the sense of something invisible to humans that produces visible effects. Similarly, the Spirit of God, like the wind, is invisible, immaterial, and powerful. The Bible also refers to God's Holy Spirit as hands or fingers. Just as the craftsman uses his hands and fingers to do his work, God has used His Spirit to produce such results as the following: the universe, the Bible, the miracles performed by His ancient servants, and their zealous preaching, the fine qualities displayed by people who obey Him. The Holy Spirit is not a person. By referring to God's Spirit as His hands, fingers, or breath, the Bible shows that the Holy Spirit is not a person. A craftsman's hands cannot function independent of his mind and body. Likewise, God's Holy Spirit operates only as He directs it. The Bible also compares God's Spirit to water and associates it with such things as faith and knowledge. These comparisons all point to the impersonal nature of the Holy Spirit.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So in a nutshell, it's a powerful spirit. Comparing it to breath, wind, and life. If we look at the word holy, it also means whole or complete. Talked a lot about spirits here. Well, a spirit that's all inclusive, that tries to help all of our brothers and sisters, because indeed we are all children of a living Creator. So that's what we're talking about here: living by a Spirit, Christ's principles, and the Holy Spirit. Now, finally, and this is where we're coming into a place that gets a lot of misunderstanding in the world of religion and theology. But let's jump over to page 44 in the Big Book. At the bottom of the page, it states, if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. Okay, so we're not talking about a code of morals here. That's usually where the shift comes in. A person gets all ready to have a spiritual life, and then the next thing you know, it turns into, oh, I need a better code of morals and a better philosophy of living. Those don't work. Because guess what? I don't have the needed power to carry out my code of morals. I already had a good code since I was a kid. My mom taught it to me. By the time I was about 5 or 6 years old, I knew what right and wrong was. Just never could live up to it. That is our big problem when we step into a church and they start talking to us about rules that we've known all our life and start telling us, keep those rules. And we're like, as if I haven't tried. What are you talking about? I'm trying to be a good guy. I can't live up to it. So, the same goes here. These things, I can't do this on my own power. I've got to have a power greater than myself. Or it's just going to be the same old story. I won't be able to live up to my own values. So let's jump over to page 62. Let's take a look at that real quick. Just to find a little agreement in the book here. In this second full paragraph, it says, many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Second full paragraph, kind of near the bottom.
Oh, 62 or 63?
62. Yeah, second full paragraph, kind of near the bottom of that paragraph. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. So let's discuss that just a little bit here. What's the difference in just having a code of morals versus a spiritual experience? We've got to get this right. There's no chance. There's a big difference.
Code of morals may be just what, again, your will is in it, trying to live by like the Ten Commandments, but the Spirit is going to be inside you, enhancing you to do the right thing.
Boy, that's a pretty good explanation.
How about Jesse?
Jesse, I'm surprised, bro. No, that's good. Anyone else want to comment on that? I don't think we have to necessarily go around the room.
I think a code of morals just lacks power.
Yeah.
Because selfishness always tempts us to get out of that code of morals.
I don't know, man. I know people that have, you know, like gain more like morals from life, and that they live by that, and that just completely and 100% defines them. And they have things they want to do that they can't do because of those morals, and they believe those morals as strong as anybody believes in religion. I think that having a spiritual like connection to something, that just makes it that, you know, especially a spiritual connection to something that shares the same morals as you, just makes you that much more vehement about following your morals, and it makes it easier really if you have a true connection to your power, because it gives you more internal power. Like we don't stay sober because of ourselves, we stay sober because God gives us the power to stay sober.
Good. I like what you just said. Other comments? Okay. Well, I think between Jesse and Matt, it's explained pretty well. It's not that we don't have these morals, and it's not that we haven't given it our all to live up to them. I mean, you know the times you've just been tired, worn out, trying so hard to be a good person, and you just can't do it anymore. That's because we don't have the power. The needed power is not there. In fact, on that next page in the big book there, page 45, it says lack of power. That was our dilemma. So here's the difference between a concept that many of our church-going fellows have, is they think we just didn't learn the morals. We know the morals. What we're looking for is the power to actually live up to them. How do we get that power? Well, that's exactly what the big book is about. It's about giving us that power. Now, a big part of that is in surrender. there is this phenomena throughout the ages, and all psychologists and theologians and others agree on this, that their observations are when a person completely surrenders, that power opens up. We surrender to, I don't know, God. I can't do this, God. It's not going to happen unless you do it, God. I can do a few minor things here, but any of this major stuff like living up to these morals, it's going to be up to you. And then amazing things happen. So, would somebody on their phone look up in the Living Bible, Galatians chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. And let's wrap up our meeting today with that scripture and possibly a little commentary on it.
Okay.
Okay?
Freedom in Christ. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Mark my words. I, Paul, tell you that if you let yourselves be circumcised, Christ will be of no value to you at all. Again, I declare to every man who lets himself be circumcised that he is obligated to obey the whole law. You who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. You have fallen away from grace. For through the Spirit we eagerly await by faith the righteousness for which we hope.
Okay, that's the New International Version. Let's read the Living Translation. That's a little more modern. Oh, no, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with multiple translations, but the most modern translation that we have that's most accurate is the Living Translation.
No, I have the International Version.
Okay, that's what he just read.
I've got it.
Okay.
So Christ has truly set us free. Now make sure that you stay free and don't get tied up again in slavery to the law. Listen, I, Paul, tell you this. If you are counting on circumcision to make you right with God, then Christ will be of no benefit to you. I'll say it again. If you're trying to find favor with God by being circumcised, you must obey every regulation in the whole law of Moses. For if you are trying to make yourselves right with God by keeping the law, you have been cut off from Christ. You have fallen away from God's grace.
There you go. Okay, let's examine what that just told us. Now, obviously, most people get fixated on the word circumcision for some reason. But we're talking about following the law here, and he's talking to some Gentiles at this point and saying, listen, guys, if you get into all this trying to keep these moral and philosophical ideas going on your own power, then you're cutting yourself off from the power of Christ. See, and that's this defining difference between accessing the power versus destroying your ability to have the power. It's when we surrender that no amount of rule keeping on our own is going to make things work. But that if we will recognize, yeah, the rules are great, and I'd love to obey each and every one of them, but Lord, I don't have the power. Jesus, if this is going to be done, it's going to be up to you. And I'm going to trust you. See, because it says if you're trying to keep the law, you cut yourself off from the power of Christ. That's a pretty strong warning, isn't it? Okay, now let's look at this in our own lives. While I tried to quit drinking and using drugs, I'd really try sometimes. I don't know if any of you guys ever did this. On my own power, it just seemed like I'd get worse. I mean, I'd be like, I only used a gram yesterday, man. I used 2 grams today, and I planned on quitting. What the heck's going on? I cut myself off from the power of Christ. I cut myself off from the power. And it's going to work that way with everything. So we see it in the big book. We see it in the Bible. We see that this message is about trusting in a higher power than ourselves. And it's not about demonstrating, and this is the final statement, so get this, you even want to write this one down. It's not about demonstrating to God how good we can be. It is about allowing God to demonstrate how powerful He is through us.
Say that one more time.
It is not about demonstrating to God how good we can be, but allowing God to demonstrate how powerful He is through us.
Awesome.
And that is our meeting for today, gentlemen. Good morning, everybody. My name is John. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And we are having a meeting based on how to maintain a happy recovered state. It's entitled Keeping in Good Spirits. And the point of this meeting is that we'll want to watch for any unwanted spirit. And when we refer to spirit, we're talking to something actually tangible. We're not talking about a Hollywood-style spirit. We're talking about spirits like fear, resentment, selfishness, and dishonesty. This is the negative side of those spirits. And for each one of those, there is a positive. There are good principles of courage, forgiveness, compassion, and honesty. As you can see on the board, it identifies each one of them. And there is its exact opposite. So I'll say that one more time. On the left there's fear, selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment. And on the right-hand side, the positive spirits, courage, compassion, honesty, and forgiveness. Now, what we want to look at is, what spirits have we lived by in the past?
Negative. The negative one.
The negative ones, right. Could that possibly be our problem?
Yes.
That we were under the impression that if fear motivated us, we get up in the morning worried about our bills for the day and worried about what circumstance will turn out to be, that somehow this motivation, which we do get motivated by fear, that somehow things would turn out okay. But in all reality, when we're operating out of fear, we're usually making a lot of decisions that are not really best for ourselves or others. We're just simply running away from a monster. What's even worse, it's usually a monster that doesn't exist. On the other hand, if we're operating out of courage, courage gives us that ability to move forward and get the job done that we need to get done. If you look at these men who have faced great challenges, that have gotten medals of valor for heroic acts and so forth, it's not that they were free of the awareness of the danger they're facing, perhaps in a wartime situation. But they face that with courage and they move forward. So courage is the spirit by which we would like to live.